I have a list of things that I want to talk about on videos that God's been raising up, but I'm so tired, you guys. I'm so tired because I've been visiting with my grandchildren and doing that for, several days at a time just because of our sort of current arrangement with the baby being so young. And as much as I relish in every moment, there is a reason you have those kids young because they wear you out. But oh my goodness, they're so precious. So I'm kind of in a place today where I'm so tired, but when you're so overly tired that you just can't go to sleep, and I want to get to some of these videos, some of these topics. So my daughter and I were having this conversation about our family members, and even though the immediate family members, at least from what we've seen as she's been alive and I've been alive, have been Mormon. But as we look back, the generation just before what we saw was Catholic. So I have Catholic family that came from Italy, and then during the famine and the war, my family, because they were poor farmers in Italy, in Campobasso, they had a choice to either go to the United States or to go to Argentina, and they started out in Argentina. And that's where my mother was born. And they were actually the first Mormons in South America. They were very, very proud of that. They had the whole picture of the family and the article in the Ensign, which is a magazine in the Mormon church. And I also had a grandfather, my father's father, who grew up in a Catholic orphanage. And that's where a lot of the really bad abuse came from in my family, was through him. And what he learned there at the orphanage, and then what my father learned from his father, and so on. And so I was mentioning this to my daughter and saying, it's kind of interesting because we haven't really thought about being affected by Catholicism directly, but we most definitely have been. Not that it really matters. The tentacles of Catholicism go through all of that, all of the counterfeit religion and the prostitutes that bore out of her, which include Mormonism. Otherwise, where did Mormonism get Easter and Sunday and Christmas? Why are they observing those? They got that from their harlot mother. That's the definition of a prostitute. One who continues to prostitute themselves to the world. And that was begun by Babylon the Great of the harlot Catholic Church. And so my daughter started to talk about, on her side of the family, or her dad's side, the Catholicism, the tentacles that reach down into that part of the family. And then we started to get into a conversation about what it looked like. Because I can tell you one thing, you wouldn't necessarily talk about any person in the family and say, oh yeah, they were a Christian, they were a Catholic, or they were a Mormon, or whatever. Like that was the identity at the forefront. Surely anybody who's close to me, anybody who knows me, that's my identity. Like they're going to say, this is her deal. This is what she lives for. But you wouldn't say that about any other person who we've known in the family. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn, but I am saying it to draw a comparative analysis that all Christians need to be aware of. Because God said that he established a nation to be set apart. So there should be a clear distinction between you and the world. And that includes counterfeit Christianity, which is the world. But what we saw play out in the family is everyone with their own identities, building their own empires, surely identified by titles and expertise and money. And then sort of just being selectively Christian, selectively Catholic, selectively Mormon. Even those who would be considered as devout, Mormons go to church, at least, the Mormons I grew up with, they went to church every Sunday. They didn't miss a Sunday. Like it was I remember I had one friend who during football season, like her dad would miss, and it was like an anomaly to me. And would, go and buy a big spread, because that was another thing you didn't do on Sunday. Like you did not go and break the Sabbath by going and buying something. But see, like that's That's a perfect example of being selectively Christian. Though my family didn't do that, but boy, my family had a lot of secrets going on in that house. A lot of secrets you wouldn't want the bishop or anybody else to know. And then there were people who suspected the things that were going on in our house, and they didn't say anything. Oh, but they were all too happy to find out what was going on at your house, Carrie Ann, once I became an adult. Like, what is that? How are you keeping the church accountable when you know that children are being abused and you just turn your face, but then you show up for the gossip later and then say things like, oh, I wish I'd been there to help you. You were there. You chose not to help. You chose to ignore what was going on. So I'm telling you this because there's a lot of selective Christianity going on. And I want to talk about what we're supposed to be. Because frankly, I can't imagine living like that. Thank God. Thank God. God has seen fit to discipline me and really bring me in to understanding what he requires. And I want you to know that what he requires is that when you give yourself to Christ, you know, that thing that everyone throws around, oh, I've given myself to Christ, I'm reborn now. When you give yourself to Christ, it's got to be with the understanding that you're not yours anymore. Which means when he starts going through your life, you give yourself to him. He woos you to him. And then he starts going through your life and he's like, this has to go. And that has to go. And this has to change. And I know this is going to hurt, but you have to become this. You do it. You don't have any other identities anymore. He is your identity. And you don't say no to God. And you don't say, no, I'm not ready for that yet. You do what you have to do to get your heart there. And when you can't, you turn to him and you say, my heart isn't there yet, Lord. So turn my heart. And then you receive whatever he's doing. Guess what, guys? That's how you become a new creation. That's how you become reborn. You don't pop out of water and now you're reborn. You become a new creation through ministry, through the ministry of the Holy Spirit. And he goes through your heart and starts looking at what needs to go and what needs to change. And your job is to receive that from his spirit to your spirit. God established the concept of redemption early on in the Old Testament. And this concept was that if someone had sold themselves, or maybe you gave property or something like that, but we're going to talk about it in terms of slavery because that's going to help you to understand your own redemption. If someone had sold themselves into slavery, their kin had the right of redemption. This is also why, so this applied to property as well, right? Any kind of property. This is why when God's telling Jeremiah, Babylon's laying siege to Jerusalem, but your cousin's selling a field and you have the right to buy it, go buy it. And Jeremiah's like, Lord, you're telling me Babylon's laying siege to Jerusalem, but you're telling me to buy a field, right? Like God tells you to do some weird things sometimes. In fact, a lot of times. But that's why Jeremiah had the right to go buy that field. Now, if you wanted to redeem something, you had to add 1/5 to its value, and then you could redeem it. That was God's law. So when Paul says things like, you were bought at a price, you were bought with Christ's blood, that's what he's talking about. You were bought at a price. You sold yourself to slavery, I did too, through our sin, and then we were bought at a price. That's what it means to be redeemed. So if you were to purchase something, does that thing then turn up at you and say, okay, well, thanks, see ya? No, you purchased that thing. You get to do whatever it is that you have determined you're going to do with it. Just so happens that we have a good God whose plans for us are good, and he plans to do good things with us, but we have to be changed. Because we're not acceptable in the condition that we sold ourselves to slavery in. Do you get that? So you don't just show up. God doesn't like call you and then he's like, okay, let me just dust you off and all right, go in my temple and serve. A lot has to happen. You have to become new, a new creation. And so this is why God says, like, an early convert cannot serve in his house, because they're going to become puffed up and arrogant. They're not going to get what they need to do. Do you also think that someone being trained in the world at a university, trained to bring prestige and status to the university, you think that person is going to serve God? I don't think so. You don't become a new creation because you went to university and studied at Bible college, a bunch of commentaries without God's Spirit. That's ridiculous. It's an oxymoron. You go to the world to get trained to serve in God's house? I don't think so, guys. The training God requires and the role he's going to have you in, I have news for you. It's not going to bring you status or prestige, and no university is going to appreciate what you're doing. Trust me. This is also why God says that an overseer has to be above reproach. That means above questionable behavior, not above questioning. An overseer has to manage their own house. If they're not managing their own house, they will never manage God's house. This is why Paul said that those who have been given a trust must prove worthy. This is why Jesus said that he counts the cost, that a builder counts the cost first. Need I continue? Or is that enough? Because that should be enough to lay the foundation of what it is that God requires and how we're supposed to be thinking of why God redeems us, why it is that he woos us to himself. The end goal is that we're going to serve in his house. And if that isn't your goal, to serve in his house and to be built the way that he determines you need to be built, first by your testimony, then with your testimony you can serve him. I understand. It's, when I was getting my degree in psychology, people used to say, well, I don't have to have schizophrenia to treat schizophrenia. Guess what? That isn't the way that God does things. You have to go through certain things in order to work with his people. He is going to build you, and then you're going to be his witness, and you're going to teach transgressors his ways, not because of your credentials, but because of your experience, because of your testimony, because your credentials mean nothing to him. So you see, through that ministry, you have to become a new creation. And then guess what? When you start to serve him, he is going to break you down. I am not even playing with what I'm saying about that. He is going to keep you low in a service position, and you will be weak because your power, the power of your flesh, is nothing to him. In fact, it is a hindrance to what he's doing. So I'm telling you up front, I'm letting you know up front, do you want this or not? Because what I see and what I hear is I didn't come here for this. And then when God starts testing and showing you what he requires, people can't handle it. And when God starts exposing what's actually in your heart, what you didn't know what was in your heart. Listen, I was there. I was there too. And still, there are blind spots, I'm sure, that God still has to continue to reveal because he keeps revealing. But in the beginning, I thought, oh, God saw my heart. Look at this. If someone finally sees me. Oh, if you only knew how crazy and foolish and laughable that is, because my heart was no good. But God is going to expose. And your character is going to be revealed in whether or not you love the truth more than you do your face. I say this from time to time. You're not going to be able to save your face and your soul at the same time. You're going to have to make a decision. And I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking when people are exposed by the things that I say, whether it's on a video or I say it face to face, and their pride and arrogance wins out. Even those to whom God has revealed what I'm doing. Even those to whom God has revealed that I am a person of truth. It's heartbreaking. I don't want to say things that are going to turn anybody away. And yet God often has me do that. And then I have to deal with, okay, this isn't about me tiptoeing around anybody in order to keep them in delusion. Everybody needs to be exposed. If God tells me to speak something, I'm required to speak it. And at the end of the day, it's their own heart that has pulled them away if they decide to fall. It's so heartbreaking. I think the most heartbreaking thing about that is the possibility that that person reached what God says through Paul is enlightenment, and they decided to turn away. We're not talking about pagan enlightenment, by the way. We're saying what Paul says is it's impossible for those who have been enlightened, who have tasted of the heavenly gift, to fall and be brought back into repentance because they're insulting the Spirit of grace. They're crucifying the Son all over again. And so I wonder at times, are you placing me in a position to speak something and test the heart of that person? To test them because they've been enlightened and maybe they're not going to come back? Or do they need to go out and experience the world a little bit more and then they'll actually be humbled? I don't know. I don't know what the situation is with each person. And so it hurts my heart. It's really hard to watch and to have relationships with people 1 minute and then the very next day they're gone. Even while speaking so confidently about the truth. Even while criticizing others. You know, I told you the story about the person I spoke with who said people who reject the truth are like the girl in high school getting beat up by her boyfriend where you tell her, hey, you got to leave this guy. And she's like, well, our anniversary is next week. Well, he's going through a hard time. Someone told me that, and literally within a matter of days, they were gone. How do you become that person you just criticized? Anyway, this does not need to be a lengthy video. It is a video to help you to get into the right paradigm, the right understanding about what it is that who you are to God and what this process is all about, what it means that you've been redeemed, what it means that you have given yourself to Christ and you've died of yourself. You no longer live in the passions of your mind and body. If you're living in the passions of your mind and body, guys, it's not happened for you yet. And you need to return to God so that you don't take a chance on it not happening. You can't continue to deliberately sin. You can't continue to live in the passions of your mind and body. You can't continue to live for those old identities and those old idols and building your empire and the people and the relationships and the blah, 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 blah. You have to be changed or you're not a new creation. So stop calling yourself reborn if those things have not happened in you. And if they have happened in you, then you should understand that this is a continuous process. It is not something that happens all of a sudden. It happens through the ministry of the Holy Spirit. If this is happening for you, then you understand that you're not here for yourself anymore. That means even your marriage that you learned in the world was for you, you have to be used in that. You have to be used in that marriage. Where is that in the Bible? How do you know, wife or husband, whether your spouse is going to be saved through you? And that doesn't literally mean that you can live out their covenant. It means through your example, through your suffering, in order to bring them in, through you being changed and then moved by God to understand how to be used. Because you don't know how God is going to use you. And you can't make it up, believe me. I hope you'll take some time to think about what it means to really give yourself to Christ. And if you don't know where to start with a fast. Really, truly give yourself to Him. Really return to Him. And He's going to walk you through it if you have genuinely given yourself to Him. If you have genuinely returned to Him and examined yourself. Please discern this message with God.